Well, let's get started. Hello and welcome to this Innovations Forum webinar. I'm Ian Welsh and I'll be your host for the next hour or so. In this webinar, we'll discuss how brands make packaging decisions, balancing cost, performance and sustainability. And we'll explore the challenges they've encountered and how they can adapt their strategies to meet evolving regulations and consumer expectations. Now, we have an excellent panel today to help frame the discussion. I'm delighted to be joined by Tahirah King, Director of Sustainability and R&D Operations at Mars Pet Nutrition, and Sergio Perelman, Senior Vice President for Packaging North America at Ferrero. Welcome to you both. Now, I'll turn to our panel very shortly, but we do want to hear from you. Please be thinking about points and questions that you would like me to put to our panel and write them in the Q&A box on your Zoom window. You can, of course, like others' questions by clicking the thumbs up, and the more likes, the greater chances that I will put that question to the panel. Please do put your name and organisation when you're submitting questions. Okay, let's go. Tahirah, welcome. At Mars Pet Nutrition then, how does packaging fit into your company's broader sustainability strategy?
Ian, thank you for the question and thank you for the invite, and excited just to spend this hour with you, Sergio, and the team to talk all things packaging. Back in 2017, our company, Mars, I work for Mars Pet Care, rolled out our Sustainable Intergeneration Plan. And that plan focuses on three key pillars: healthy planet, thriving people, and nourishing well-being. And under our healthy planet pillar is where we're really focused on reducing our overall environmental footprint. And that's where packaging comes in. From our packaging perspective, it's all about eliminating unnecessary packaging, redesigning for circularity, and then investing in our circular packaging through PCR incorporation. In addition to us, as we think about our broader strategy, we're a proud signatory of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's global commitment, and also a founding member of the U.S. Circular Action Alliance, which is focused on like how do we drive EPR laws and regulations and all those key things. And all of this is working towards our overall just circular economy vision for us. And that's how packaging fits within our broader strategy and plan.
Great, thank you. Sergio, same question to you. How does it, for Ferrero, how does packaging fit into your broader sustainability strategy? Sergio, I'm afraid you're on mute.
Yeah, absolutely right. And you said that this was going to happen, right? So thank you, Ian, and thank you, Tahirah, for joining the conversation. Now, packaging and strategy for Ferrero, I think that our packaging game plan belongs into our corporate strategy, and sustainability is part of it. Just to frame, if I have to paraphrase what we are and what we stand for as a company, I would say that our main mission is to craft quality products that consumers can not only enjoy but also share. And we do it with the utmost respect for people and the planet. And we treasure the richness and diversity of the world. And we always strive for excellence and passion for quality with craftsmanship. And craftsmanship was at the core of the intention of the owners that founded the company about 80 years ago. We're constantly exploring ways to create products that meet evolving consumer needs, and we bring joy to people with delicious products. Now, the sustainability strategy is anchored on 4 pillars. Protecting the environment is number 1. Sourcing ingredients sustainably, promoting responsible consumption, and empowering people. And packaging is one of the key areas of focus for the first pillar, which is environmental protection. We make progress on these pillars by investing in innovation and technology, and by enhancing transparency and compliance, and by fostering collaboration. We started our packaging sustainability journey back in 2017, 2018, and we continually took stakes through our commitments in 2020, 2021, commitments for 2025, now reviewing commitments for 2030. And that has been mobilizing our teams and our external partners and it has been a journey filled with very, very hard work and a lot of satisfaction. And similar to Mars's strategy, it's about designing for recycling, composting, and reuse. It is partnering externally. It entails reducing the use of packaging overall and plastic packaging in particular where not needed, through a number of tracks of activity and sub-strategies, let's say. It's been a fantastic journey.
Brilliant, thank you. Really interesting that it's a key part of one of your both of you for your first pillar in your overall strategy. So that's really interesting that packaging fits in so much right at the top of the conversation. So, Tahirah, when making choices then of packaging materials, how do you approach the kind of key question around balancing aspects such as performance, safety, impact, cost, and everything else? How do you get that balance, or how do you come up with the approach to dealing with that balance?
No, that's another great question for us, and I think those factors, performance, safety, impact, and cost is what you called out, are things that we have to bring to life in how we're moving things forward. For us, quality is one of our key principles at Mars. We have several principles, but quality is one. And specifically at Pet Nutrition North America, our packaging paramount needs to ensure that we're protecting our product. We're ensuring that it stays fresh and safe for pets. That's a non-negotiable for us because pet food safety is number one. We need to make sure that we're preventing any type of contamination and we're maintaining quality, especially as it relates to shelf life, which is really, really important for us as we're delivering the best that we can for our pets. Circularity is something that we called up before that we're really focused on. And for those who may not know as much on circularity, it's ensuring that we're creating packaging that can be reused, recycled, composted, which keeps the materials in the loop and really out of landfills or just out of the environment for us. So we have to balance this with performance and safety. Specifically in our Design for Circularity program, we've actually been shifting towards more recyclable and robust materials like monomaterials, like polyethylene and those in that space. This really allows us then to help our packaging become more sustainable without compromising on critical aspects of performance and quality and safety. Throughout all these things that we're building, we continue to factor in and balance in environmental impact. What does it mean from our carbon footprint perspective? How are we doing as less harm as possible? And also cost, which, we're a business. So that's something, as we continue to make investments in sustainability, we have to balance that also with what it means from a cost perspective. But we are intentional about doing those things to make sure that we're delivering the best solution that we have possible for our pets, for people, and collectively for the planet. So it's something that we're continue to be locked in and committed to, but it is a balancing act. And all those things are really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I mean, it's something that's very important to remember, isn't it? That packaging has to do its job. If you think packaging not doing its job properly, then it's not a lot of point.
100%.
You have to have that bottom line of, it needs to protect the product and keep it safe. So that's a really important point to make. Sergio, same question to you then. When making these choices around packaging materials, how do you at Ferrero approach the challenges of balancing the aspects of performance, safety, impact, and cost?
Very, very similar to what Tahirah explained. For us, not only quality, but mainly food safety is number one priority. It's a non-negotiable. We actually have very, very high standards. This is a European company that has expanded globally. And sometimes we have been as stringent as the most stringent regulatory demands in European markets, and even more. And that has created problems for us in flexibility of supply, but we do not budge. Quality is what our consumers expect of our products. I have actually an example, and this has been a very, very tough journey. I don't know whether you see, this is the Ferrero collection box. This used to be produced in polystyrene, perfectly recyclable material. There's not a real mature market for polystyrene, but what our consumers value is the possibility of seeing our product very transparently and the premium look and feel. And it has been a challenge to identify a different material that delivers on that, delivers on food safety, delivers on the perception that we aspire to keep, delivers on cost, and tackles all of the structural requirements. We needed to deliver on all of those elements and to minimize the trade-offs in certain attributes. And cost has been one of them. So you can imagine that we had to be clear from the very beginning on what needed to be true to deliver on all these needs. And we created a plan to achieve it across the full portfolio. It was a centrally driven effort. It was supported by a board and delivered through a plan where the whole organization was involved in making it happen. So every one of these challenges has its particularities, but all of these elements that I've just described are present in all of them.
Thank you. How did those internal conversations develop then? You talked about it being a centrally driven effort. How did those conversations evolve to ensure that all sides of the business were on side when taking this forward?
I mean, every one of these companies, which are quite complex and have different organizational models and ways of driving business, have a similar challenge, which is how to energize the full organization around delivering on these goals that are very, very, entail very tough trade-off decisions. They have to be backed up by a corporate strategy that is well prepared for and informed, and that is addressing the overall impacts to the full business, so that those trade-offs can be discussed and aligned with management support for things to move. Otherwise, it gets stuck. And I have experienced success, difficulties, and sometimes failure in 3 organizations. But the common denominator has been a very, very clearly informed set of consequences, clearly delineated with a holistic perspective by the team that is entitled to or held accountable for bringing this view, and then bring this view to the upper levels of the organization so that decisions can be backed, and then working between the bottom up and top down levers that these organizations have in order to make things happen.
Thank you. Tahirah, I wonder if you'd be interested in commenting that as well. How did the conversation develop at Mars Pet Care? Where were the challenges, and how did everybody get on side?
I mean, for that one, it's often what we did, and even our approach within our packaging sustainability program for North America, we started off with, I'll call it a very in-depth SWOT analysis. And we looked for us, especially in being a signatory for the Ellen MacArthur Foundation Global Commitment, to these key things around, designing for recyclability, virgin plastic. Where are the opportunities? Where are we winning in the portfolio, and where do we see those opportunities, to be completely honest? And with those opportunities where we saw there being a gap, how can we go about closing the gap? And I think that becomes, Ian, the power in your question: how do we close the gap? And there's a lot of factors that need to be true on that. One, we assess where we are from a material and technology perspective. What then is success? For us, success, we've designed where we can go fully recyclable. Let's lean in those spaces where capability is there and understood, technologies are developed. But we also know to be fully circular, it takes two things. One, you got to be designed for circularity. And then two, you need to have an infrastructure mature enough with waste collection and sorting to be established. So we need to make sure, one, at PET, we're one designed for circularity. So that's been our quest thus far. We know this is a marathon, not a sprint. So how are we ensuring that we are designed for recyclability for that? So in that space for us, we bring that to life through monomaterials. So what needs to be true for monomaterials? How are we working with commercial team on what needs to be true on sourcing? How are we set up collectively within our supply chain that we have the capability to be able to run, to be able to store and produce those things? How are we designing them from an R&D perspective? What needs to be true from an investment? How are we funding these things? So all of these go into factors. And for us, we at most, because we are a global company, where can we centrally look at some energies where it's more deploy versus develop? So we're looking at these things where we can do more deployment versus a particular regional development. And then we're going after these things and making sure that first and foremost for us is do no harm for our pets, and making sure that we're doing things from a product safety, ensuring that performance is key. Yet we're being very clear on our commitments to the globe and to ensure that we're making a better world for pets and for the parents who have to support those pets. So that's been our process.
Sure. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you also to our questioners. We have 3 questions already. Do keep them coming. We'll come to those very shortly. I want to turn now to something that's probably been the biggest area of controversy in packaging over the past decade or so, and it's in terms of plastic, and talk a bit about what each of your company's plastic packaging strategy looks like. Tahirah, why don't you go first? So what is your plastic packaging strategy at Mars Pet Nutrition?
Okay, so specifically for plastic, and I've called out a couple of things, but as we look at that, one, redesigning our packaging for circularity. And I love throwing the fingers up, 1, 2, 3. One, that. 2, reducing our virgin plastic footprint. So we're eliminating unnecessary plastic materials. That's a step forward in that process. And then 3, looking at increasing PCR or post-consumer resin and increasing that content collectively within our portfolio. So for us, a couple examples of how we brought that to life. One, we are incorporating PCR, or that post-consumer recycled content, in our clear shrink film. So you think about the shrink film that wraps around multi-can packs. Actually, as you look at that for brands like Pedigree and Iams, that now incorporates recycled content, once again, in our quest to reduce the amount of virgin plastic that we're using. We know that PCR content, it's more environmental friendly. It's made from recycled plastics collected from consumers. It helps us in reducing our energy consumption, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a positive for us that we've been intentional about incorporating. In addition to that, as far as redesigning, we actually, within our medium and our large flex bags, so think about that Pedigree bag, the 15-pound, the 30-pound bags. We actually have converted those to monomaterial bags as woven polypropylene. Polypropylene is a monomaterial. So we're actually going after that in our quest of making sure that we are recycled ready in that space. As you purchase a bag, hopefully we have some Pedigree, Iams, Neutro owners out there. As you're purchasing a bag, you're purchasing a bag that is monomaterial, that is recycled ready today. Once that infrastructure is established and moving, you can recycle that bag. And another example of what we're doing around our plastic strategy is leveraging a lot of the work of our vendors and things that, vendors and partners that we have, that we work closely with. One example of that is our Perfect Pallet project. This is an initiative that helps us in optimizing the amount of plastic that we're using and wrapping our pallets. It helps us reduce the excess plastics. It helps us in identifying the most effective stretch wrap for our facilities, and also ensures that we have proper containment for all of our products. So for us, as we think about our plastic strategy, kind of summing it all up, it's really about making the smarter choices that help reduce our plastic waste without compromise. And I think Sergio and I will be a gong on this one without compromising food safety and quality. And this is just the start for us. As I said before, I'm excited about the progress made, but these are steps on the journey. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And we're excited about the work that we're doing. And we're just getting started, and there's more work to be done. So that for us is really kind of in essence that plastic packaging strategy.
Thanks very much, Tahirah. Sergio, same question to you. What is the plastic packaging strategy at Ferrero? And just to build on the point from Tahirah, there's no point in moving from a plastic waste problem to a food waste problem, is there? So that needs to be very consciously thought of as the strategy evolves.
Yes, and we are very aligned because once we, Mars, other companies started this journey a few years ago, in between 2015 2020, everyone big mobilized in this space. We all conducted our materiality assessments. We all concluded that plastic was a big issue. We all concluded that we needed to map our plastic footprint and take action. We use plastic where food safety and product quality cannot be achieved with other materials. And this is in the context of the operating conditions needed to deliver products efficiently. So sometimes we do use plastics for efficiency. All new packaging is designed for recycling, composting, or reuse, mainly recycling. We also take action to map all packaging materials and components that are not designed for recycling, not only plastic packaging, but all packaging. And we have made plans to secure the redesign for recycling, starting with the ones with highest impact to our business and to the environment, where most of the volume is and most of the issues are focused. We have also taken action to reduce the use of virgin plastic by eliminating components where it is feasible and safe, reducing the weight of plastic packaging components again where it is feasible and safe, and replacing plastic packaging by other materials where unintended consequences were not paramount. Internally, we are always looking for opportunities to replace disposable packaging for internal operations by reusable packaging. And we have tested selected reusable consumer packaging. We understand the difficulties in terms of organizing the value chain around it and the right model for the right type of product. But complementing all of this, we understand that there is a number of challenges associated with recycling markets, composting markets, and the reuse models. Recycling is where most of the effort has been gravitated, and securing a future for recycling of the most challenged materials has been a key area of focus for us. For us, it's flexible packaging on the one side for plastics, so collection models, and polypropylene is a big item for us, for Tic Tac, for Nutella, for Ferrero Rocher, for collection, etc. And we are partnering externally to ensure that there is a solid future of evolved collection for recycling models across a very diverse geography like the North American geography overall, with 9,000 collection models in catchment areas across various counties and so on that are not harmonized. So all of that has been part of our game plan.
Okay, thank you. Let's move into thinking about innovation. Tahirah, you've touched on some of this already, but what are the innovations in packaging strategies that you're most excited by right now?
Packaging. I just really think, just in reflection, even preparing for the conversation today, just step back from just kind of what we're doing, but just like you said, really what's inspiring me right now. And I just think packaging is such a cool and interesting space. And I may be, preaching to the choir here because we're all in that space, or most of us are quite familiar with it. But I really see packaging as that first tangible touch point with consumers. So the impact of it just matters so much in so many ways. I take a lot of inspiration from folks like Amazon. You know, one of the things that I really appreciate from Amazon is seeing outwardly their journey. And for us around innovation, I love the things that are helping us in eliminating unnecessary packaging and moving towards more sustainable and circular packaging. I love the fact that I see now in Amazon, and fortunately, I throw my hand to say we get a few boxes a week from Amazon, that we're starting to see more of it being SIOC or shipping your own container. So it doesn't have the box and then the bag within the box. We just have the bag. So I think that's really, really great for us to look at those things as inspiration, as what we can bring to life here. And at PET, we've really been looking at how do we reduce the amount of unnecessary packaging, and keep it really one with product safety, you know, as a key tenet. How do we bring that to life? I also see a lot of potential in our recyclable monomaterials like polypropylene. Polypropylene helps us in a good balance of ensuring that we have recycled ready packaging, but we're also ensuring that we're maintaining that product safety and freshness, which is especially important in food products. Another innovation that I like and I'm glad to see more about is the use of post-consumer resin and really incorporating PCR content. We're doing that within our packaging, and I'm excited to see others in the category and just food categories collectively doing more of incorporating of recycled content, the safe incorporation of recycled content. I think it helps us close the loop by reducing our need for virgin plastics. So these are some of the innovation pieces. I also get inspired by the smaller companies that are doing more of the bio-based, the seaweed, and just different things there. I love the creativity, the ingenuity behind these things. We're looking for things, you know, one that are gonna set us up to be able to scale. So that's one thing that as we look at ideas and test and learns, where are the possibilities that we can scale this across the board, that we're not sacrificing quality and safety as, you know, as a result. But I say even with innovation, there's no silver bullet. And I don't think there's going to be just one solution that's going to solve them all. I think it's going to be a combination. And I think it's really about how do we experiment? How do we look at testing and learning and scale the things that are truly impactful for us? And that's been our approach on innovation, but also taking those inspiration from the smaller companies, from the Amazons, you know, and how we can do those small changes and incorporate it into our packaging plans.
Thank you. Sergio, for you then, what's exciting you in terms of innovation? What are the new materials that you're seeing coming through, and why are you excited about them?
Look, I mean, I'm easily excited by everything in packaging. I mean, it has been 30 plus years of experience. And once you get trapped into the beauty of the packaging value chain, it's difficult to walk out. Sometimes you don't even want to venture outside of it. I am excited about developments in many, many fields, well beyond the sustainability space. Fields where food companies can leverage packaging to solve issues. Many of them related to waste management and food waste, but even beyond. Developments in smart packaging technology are fascinating. Technologies that enable product traceability, technologies that provide cues to secure product shelf life, or informing consumers how to dispose of the packaging once they use the product. I am thrilled about technologies that protect the product in such a way that layers of consumer packaging can be eliminated. The other area of interest for me, for the whole industry, I believe, is compostable packaging for specific applications, bio-based plastics, how we are opening space for increasing the use of recycled content in packaging overall and in plastics in particular. Compostable packaging with caveats, I would say, not for nothing. For example, in Europe, it is regulated not to be or not pushed to be used in packaging overall. In let's say in fast-moving consumer applications overall, but in those applications where food waste can be otherwise trapped, like tea bags, like quick service restaurants, or disposal of organic waste in the business-to-business food sector. What is it that I don't feel excited about? Advanced recycling would eventually open up for use of recycled content in applications that today cannot use recycled content, like in many food content applications using polyolefins that are difficult to separate and purify mechanically. I'm excited about all of that.
Great, well, thank you. Your point around compostable packaging, is there a danger of encouraging waste, or perhaps not encouraging waste, but removing the need to reduce the amount of packaging if you have a sort of all-encompassing composting solution? Are you conscious of that? Is that part of is that something that you guys are aware of? Sergio, sorry, to you.
The big issue with compostable packaging for applications that can be for challenges that can be solved in other ways is the lack of adequate infrastructure for incorporating packaging into composting value chains, and the unintended consequence to that value chain in terms of efficient operations. So that's why I think that compostable packaging has a role to play where it unleashes management of organic waste more efficiently.
Thanks. Tahirah, do you want to comment on that as well? Because obviously there's a clear danger of, if the overall strategy is reducing, if you have a solution that involves, well, it just disappears, or, in inverted commas, disappears, is there a danger there that the kind of overall push towards reducing gets missed?
I think it is. It's one that is on our radar collectively. We haven't launched anything in compostable packaging at this point in time, but it very much is something that we continue to monitor. I think composting, and I know a lot of people, I have friends and coworkers who have really educated even me some on composting in that journey, which I think it's very individual. There's multiple levels and ways that we're bringing that to life. And I think there's still a tremendous amount of learnings in that space. And for us, we really have been on the learning journey around composting. Our focus stays the same, of our tenets of reducing and eliminating as much unnecessary packaging as possible. So that continues to be our North Star as we move forward, but we still are very, very in tune, and we have great people who are working on more front end innovation from a packaging perspective. What is composting, what is biodegradable, what that looks like, how can we ensure that we're doing no harm while still also bringing potentially some of these things to more of the forefront. So I would say, with Sergio, it's a learning journey for us. It's something that we're aware of. Bio-based materials collectively, we have teams that are working on what could be possible for us in this space, but we're still really laser focused on eliminating the packaging, designing for circularity, reducing our virgin plastic footprint, and incorporating recycled content as much as possible.
Yeah, I guess a lot of people got their fingers burnt around some of the biodegradable plastic debate we had a few years ago, where in fact some materials were simply degrading into microplastics, which in some respects are even more harmful. So yeah, there's a 100%. Lot of lessons were learned there, I guess. Thank you again to everyone for your questions. We'll come to them very shortly. I just want to go to one final point just now, and that's the role of some of the other solutions around refilling, reusing, recycling we've talked about. These have been part of the conversation, but they only work in certain occasions, certain times, certain places effectively. I was wondering, just very briefly, to hear from your perspective, how do you go about ensuring these sorts of, sorry, I didn't say that very well, but how do you go about ensuring that the most effective approach is used when you're thinking about these sort of other solutions?
You were breaking up a bit there, Ian, but I think the question is around, I know we've talked before in some of refill, reuse, and recycling, and how do we ensure that we have an effective approach to them? And I think all of them play a critical role in what we've talked about before. I think Sergio are aligned and will continue to chime the horn around reducing packaging waste collectively. But all of them come with their own set of considerations and challenges, just to be completely honest. Specifically, as it comes to refill, we've said many times food safety for us is our top priority, especially in our pet food industry. And as we look at refill specifically, well, I know there have been some pilots of this work and excited to continue to follow and understand what's happening there. As we think about refill stations, appropriate storage solutions are critical and need to be a part of the conversation when we look there. So the concept in and of itself is interesting, but we have to find ways to address the challenges of potential contamination, potential infestation, and some of these other things that could go opposed to food safety, ensuring that the quality is there. So we're continuing to look at what needs to be true, partnering with our quality and our food safety teams, and what could be true for us before we really rescale something like that collectively. Reuse is something that's very interesting for us, which is really for us, when we think about reuse, we think about extending packaging life. I think that's the key thing that many of us are going after, is how do we extend packaging life? And I think about the work that we've done with our dry flexible pet food bags that are made out of that monomaterial woven polypropylene. Given that these bags are really, really durable, people have found ways to repurpose them. And I think the upcycling trend and just repurposing is something that, while you're not looking at fully recyclable options, you are extending that packaging life. And some people even use those bags to grow potatoes, to help with litter boxes. There's a lot of different ways that we can extend product life versus it being that one and done from a reuse perspective. And we also are leveraging and considering some pilots with those that do reuse very, very well. And I don't have to name names, but I know a lot of them are familiar with companies that do that work. We've done that before. Lastly, recycling. And recycling to me is where collaboration really shines. And I think we've been spending a lot of time even on the call talking about recycling. We do our part in producing recyclable packaging, but it's also about ensuring infrastructure is in place, that we're increasing consumer awareness. We haven't spoke a lot about consumer awareness and making sure that we're driving the consumers to provide them visibility to where packaging should go after you've used it. One of the things that we have incorporated are how to recycle logos, or H2R logos, that help in providing our consumers visibility to, is this pack recyclable? Where should this pack go next? That's a piece of that consumer awareness. And lastly, we need to be supporting policies that are encouraging recycling. That's why we signed on as a founding member of the US, the Circular Action Alliance. That's something that helps us in establishing, working with establishing policies, understanding around extended producer responsibilities and what needs to be true on these things. So that's another thing that we're doing in this space. So I think in essence, or rolling it up, it's a combined effort. And I think the most effective approach when we think about refill, reuse, is recycling, is a mix of all the three. I think we have to tailor solutions based on what needs to be true for the material, for our industry, specifically pet, and then collectively for the globe.
Thanks, Tahirah. Sergio, same point to you. For Ferrero, where does the refill, reuse, recycling of packaging discussion sit?
So our focus for food contact material has been overwhelmingly recycling and creating the conditions for effective recycling markets. Very advanced in Europe as compared to North America, where collection schemes are more harmonized, clear labeling schemes are more harmonized at national level, regulations coming up on stream at much higher speeds than in North America, and communicating with consumers has been a challenge, but less so than in North America. I think that I agree with Tahirah that our advocacy efforts and our funding as founding members of the Circular Action Alliance to ensure that extended producer responsibility regulations in North America get more harmonized, so that the effort can really be leveraged more effectively across the US environment. Reuse, we have been leveraging every opportunity for reusing non-food contact materials internally in our supply chains, but food contact materials has been a challenge identifying the right model. The issue is highly challenging from a systemic perspective, and we are, let's say, we are enthusiastic about the work that we are doing pre-competitively with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation to understand what are the appropriate models for each type of product and the pilots that have been in place. But our focus has been more for food contact materials, recyclability, and advocacy for the conditions for effective recycling.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm going to turn to our questions from the audience now. Thanks again for them. Several questions focusing on end of life and what the duties of brands, packaging manufacturers are in terms of end of life. So, Tahirah, how do you approach the end of life? What are the key things that you're thinking about when your responsibilities regarding this? And I guess how are the advent of extended producer responsibility or how are they impacting the end of life thinking?
I think for us, as we really think about end of life, it's a couple of things. I think it's one, how are we with the products that we have now are being mindful of the environmental footprint that they offer, and then two, ideally for us being laser focused on how do we do as less harm as possible, where we don't have the fully recyclable options today that will help us in extending life, because essentially that's the circular economy. You're building more of the same, that we are ensuring that we're recycled ready, but ensuring that we're investing in a circular economy. So how do we do that? I think we do that, one, through using post-consumer resin. I think by default of us using that then puts more of a tug and a need to create more of it. So that's one of the things that we're doing to help us in extending the life, product life. We know as well with using that it helps in that build. We also are partnering with the Circular Action Alliance, with the US Plastic Pact, with some other NGOs to really support how do we drive, really making a push on the infrastructure changes that need to be true to help us in being able to return recycled ready packaging to, promote and extend product life. So those are some of the key things that we're working on. I can tell you it's a challenge every time we think about packaging, we think about shipping something out. Are we doing as less harm as possible? Are we continuing to advocate, to push, to work with our key partners, our governmental associations and organizations as to what needs to be true for us to ensure that we're building that circular economy?
Thanks, Tahirah. Sergio, a similar point to you. You mentioned earlier, I was just checking back in my notes, you mentioned earlier, you talked about traceability and tracking packaging. So how are you looking to track and manage the end of life for your packaging material? What are you involved in there?
Look, I would say broadly, for us, it is about a broad understanding of the material impacts on end of life. And understanding that at all costs, we need to avoid food waste. Because when you compare the overall environmental impacts beyond management of waste, of losing food, it is 10 to 20 times or even more than the packaging itself. So for every design decision, I would say, we take a holistic approach to understand impacts not only on waste, but also on other environmental impacts, including global warming potential. So the use of LCAs, the concerted choice in terms of how to position a product and what types of packaging material to use for the evolution of that product portfolio. And then I think that we've mentioned our approach to minimizing the impacts on end of life, primarily in the space of recycling. So I don't need to repeat ourselves. And I think that the most important challenge is for us to not only complete our journey for designing for recycling and composting, but most importantly, working pre-competitively through advocacy and creating the conditions for extended producer responsibility regulations, which is the only level playing field approach that would, evolve the actual results in the market in terms of end-of-life management, so that we can all, comply and drive the agenda with higher speed.
Thank you. Yes, you're right. Policy now does impact in so many different areas here. Another one, of course, is recycling. A lot of questions coming up from our audience around recycling and some of the aspects of that. Let's touch on some of them now. In particular, what do you think, Tahirah and Sergio, what is the role of your sort of organization to encouraging common infrastructure in recycling? I mean, Sergio touched on this earlier. There's a problem. It's all a bit piecemeal. What is the role of companies like yours to encourage that sort of common recycling infrastructure, Tahirah?
I think for us, one, it's really advocating, as Mars, as a region, as collectively a globe, on the need for, these infrastructure changes to be made. And I can tell you, like, it's not a me problem. It's a us opportunity. I mean, all of us. And I think I've seen the power of us collectively going after this. I think about things like the plastic pack and what we're doing with the Circular Action Alliance. Us collectively as CPG companies, and even those that are just kind of impacted without that, that aren't consumer good companies that are really going after this change, us investing in EPR. Like, I can tell you, like, we already have signed up to invest in helping and driving with our dollars, not just with the words we're saying, but the investment that we're putting in place to help us in establishing, what needs to be true to drive that circular economy, to ensure that we're really pushing things from an infrastructure perspective. So I think it's partnerships, it's our voice. I mean, I'm very proud of how active we've been. I think about Climate Week that was just last week, and how many of us, I can only imagine Ferrero, Sergio, having an ample seat there at Climate Week as well, continuing to advocate for infrastructure to be done. And it's powerful when larger companies like ours are really pushing for this to happen. And then even at a smaller level, continuing to offer awareness to our consumers, calling out and talking about the fact that we're including recycled content, that we're doing these things to eliminate the amount of packaging that we have. There's a groundswell that happens in that continues to really press upon more demand for these things to happen as well. So I'm excited about the work, the partnerships that we play. Like I said, it's not a us or a me problem. It's an opportunity for all of us. And I think when we leverage the collective power of all of us going after this, we're going to see some results.
Thank you. Sergio, for you, what's the role of Ferrero in encouraging better recycling infrastructure, more common infrastructure? You referenced the fact that there are so many different methods out there.
And not only this is for Ferrero, but I've seen it as a concerted approach across big peer companies operating at a number of levels. One is the one that Tahirah described, which is advocacy efforts, alignment behind common positions, leveraging trade associations and leveraging pre-competitive NGO-led approaches, Ellen MacArthur, our associations, etc. Another one is working not only in the space of advocacy, but also in terms of catalytic moves and specific investments, improving models, like, for example, many of the tracks of activity happening around the recycling partnership to prove and to invest in catalytic dollars for grants that foster integration of certain challenged materials into recycling schemes in various parts of the country, or proving the model, the most efficient model or various models, and what are the pros and cons of various models of collecting flexible packaging for recycling. And then doing our own internal work by showing leadership. So, for example, back to flexible packaging, we are all investing in shifting multi-polymer flexible packaging films to monopolymer designed flexible films, even though for a number of years, curbside recycling, which will guarantee a significant uptick in rates of recycling, is not expected to take place. But it needs to be, design for recycling needs to be in place such that once our advocacy efforts end up with regulations and end up with schemes that are well funded, then we can valorize most of those materials, right?
Sure. No, thank you. Absolutely. Sergio, quick question just for you. A question's asked. It points out you mentioned your excitement around smart and connected packaging technology. Can you give any examples of how you're specifically rolling that out at Ferrero?
So a number of tracks of activity that enable us to trace packaging in our internal value chain. The use of barcodes to enable consumers to engage with us, and in some cases provide instructions or perspectives on recycling and environmental concerns and the source of raw materials, etc. Those, I would say, are the two areas.
Okay, thank you. We have a question about virgin content, and it's something that both of you guys have mentioned. Our question points out that in Sweden and in many markets, only virgin materials allowed for food contact. What's the prospect that you see of this changing? Is this something that we're likely to see in the near future? And will regulation around this shift, you think, Tahirah?
I mean, for us, I think it's evolving, to be completely honest. I think a resin-to-resin change probably can have larger impacts to the quality, the palatability of food, and sometimes it won't at all. I can tell you that with food safety, quality being paramount for us, that when we have incorporated at the levels that we can incorporate, we've done thorough testing around ensuring that product quality is intact and nothing is harmed, and that we can still honor our shelf life commitments, what needs to be true from a barrier perspective. But I think it's still new, to be completely honest. And that's where for us, where we can go after things are the shrink wraps, are the pallet, the pallet wraps and different things, the stretch films in that space. We're going really, really hard because we know that's not touching things directly. When it comes to primary packs, I mean, it's one that, we have to look at how we're processing the resin that would need to be incorporated and ensure that we're doing no harm. But I think it's continuing to evolve, and we're continuing to learn collectively as an industry, a food industry, on what is acceptable, how much is acceptable, how far can we lean, knowing that food safety is paramount above it all. So those are some of the things and considerations for us and things that we've done in that space.
No, great point. I guess move the needle where you can now, but at the same time is trying to get the really difficult conversations up and running as well. Sergio, do you want to comment further on the potential use of non-virgin materials in food contact?
Well, I would say that for ourselves and for similar companies, use of recycled PET, first in non-food contact applications and then in food contact applications, is the starting point, right? Because it is the only commodity space where a lot of work has concluded in an evolution in the recycling industry and the use of recycled content that is food contact that is available for use. We use a lot of non-food contact trays and significant amounts of recycled PET, both in Europe and in North America. And we have been working very hard. We are not yet at the point of saying, you know, this is ubiquitous use at this point in a number of food contact applications. So not yet in the market right now in North America, but PET is the starting point. Now, the use of recycled content in non-food contact applications for transport packaging and packaging used for consolidating trade units and transport and pallets, so shrink and stretch, has been an area of focus. For me, the key hurdle will be whether technology and infrastructure and investment and regulations will be conducive to incorporate recycled content at scale in the polyolefin space for food contact, advanced recycling, and a number of hurdles for that industry to really become mainstream, including environmental concerns as it relates to overall global warming. But that, for me, would be the key game changer once all those hurdles are tackled.
Okay, thank you. I'm conscious of time. So final question, and I'd like to ask our panelists to try to bring together their thoughts in answering this. And it's a great question from one of our audience members. I'm going to paraphrase it slightly and extend it slightly. Do you think that in approaching all of these challenges around packaging, are we focusing too much on incremental improvement or not enough on systemic change? Or do you think it's inevitable it will be incremental because the systemic change just isn't perhaps there? So what do you think, Tahirah? Is there too much focus on little changes moving forward, or need we go for huge systemic change?
I mean, for me, I boil down to what I said earlier. I think it's a marathon and not a sprint. And I think that it is going to take, and I'm a believer in small changes rolling up to big things happening, to be completely honest. I don't think we necessarily focus only on just the small little incremental changes, but I'm a believer in how do those small changes actually get you to your final goal. And I think for us collectively, we have been looking at North Star of those commitments that we signed on with Ellen MacArthur Foundation and what needs to be true to hit those and deliver those. We know that there's going to be some steps along the way to get there. I believe you can do them both. I believe that while you're doing those incremental changes, because what those incremental changes build are a commitment to the plan, I think, which is really important for us to get people bought into the plan. And then while you're doing that, you can also be working holistically with the industry about really making those changes. Those systemic changes aren't going to take one company. It's going to take all of us. So I think while we're doing our things and we're learning, and hopefully we're sharing and we're building as a result, we can still continue to partner on the big systemic changes that are needed.
Thank you, Sergio. Very briefly, if you wouldn't mind, just is it too much of a focus on incremental, or is that really the only way we're going to get there?
I think I don't see it as a black and white. I see it as a continuum between the easiest things to do, which you would say it's incremental, to the more systemic ones that would require infrastructure or intra-company coordination and investments. I would go from, lightweighting, incremental, easy. We're all doing it. Use of recycled content in food contact, a bit more difficult. Also in the middle of it is changing formats, and I have seen many industries in certain markets where they have shifted from very bulky, rigid packaging, both plastic and non-plastic, for flexible packaging, and it was a little bit more less incremental and more how do you call it, Ian? More radical.
Yeah.
To all the way to, if you wish, replacing virgin by recycled content in the polyolefin space, which requires a new industry to emerge and become feasible, right? And that is much more difficult. It takes a significant effort. But I've seen, for example, the beverage industry do a lot of work in format and unleashing reuse by shifting model in terms of how they deliver the liquid, right? From refill all the way to different delivery models like fill stations and so on, right? So.
Great. Thanks, Sergio. I'm sorry to discuss. We've actually run out of time. We've gone over time. Thank you so much. It's just a fascinating conversation. We could easily carry on for a lot longer. Many, many thanks to Tahirah and Sergio for their time and insight and candor today. Been really fascinating conversation. Thank you so much indeed. What we've been talking about will be on the agenda at the Sustainable Packaging Innovation Forum in Philadelphia on October 29th and 30th. Full details on the Innovation Forum website. Click on the webinar link now and it will redirect you to the conference landing page. I do hope you can join us there. Special discount for live listeners, webinar 10, just use that at the checkout. We'll be in touch in the next few days to share the audio and video recordings of this webinar. You can watch again and listen at your leisure or share with your colleagues. But for now, my thanks again to the panel. I hope you found this webinar useful. I've been Ian Welsh. Thanks for joining us and goodbye.